has been posted. Can I get attendance roll call?
Certainly. Mr. Buckmaster?
Here.
Mr. Bowman? Here. I am here. Mrs. Warwick?
Here.
Mr. Schrader's excused. Mr. Strong?
Here.
Mr. Kowalski?
Here.
We have 7.
Thank you.
Six.
One absent.
Who's
Thank
counting?
you. Mr. Bowman, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of the agenda as proposed, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Moving on to item 2, consent agenda. Can I get a motion for consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Anything in consent agenda that needs separate consideration or questions? I'm going to ask to have item E deferred to the next board meeting. Could I get a motion for deferral on that?
Which item?
Item E, WIA renewal.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of the consent agenda, or I'm sorry, the item E being removed, say aye.
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 Opposed? That passes unanimously. Now, the consent agenda as proposed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item, we don't have a student representation, item 4, public forum. This is your opportunity to bring anything to the board's attention that you would like. Don't all run up. Hearing none, moving on to item 5, Superintendents Report.
All right, we have the pleasure to have our boys track relay team here, and Coach Owen, if you want to come on up and meet President Kowalski.
So we have certificates of appreciation for each of you. I'm just going to read one of them, and they're the same, with the exception of your name. It says, Certificate of Appreciation. The Muskego Norway School Board hereby congratulates Austin Hewitt for his contribution to the boys track relay team for winning the state championship in the 4x200 relay in a time of 1:27.04, a record for the Muskego High School, and second place in the 4x100 relay in a time of 41.98 seconds. These times are the 5th and 6th fastest times for their respective events in state history for all divisions. The Muskego Norway School Board commends Austin for his perseverance, team spirit, and commitment to excellence in the sport of boys track that has brought honor to himself, his family, the Muskego Norway schools, and the community. Presented this day, and it's signed by officers. So, Austin, he's not here.
He's the one.
The one on here, of course. Sam, congratulations. Thank you. Justin, So is it Richard or RJ? RJ.
So Coach, if you want to give us a
Sure.
little.
I'm Coach Jared, head boys track field coach. Very proud of these guys and their accomplishment. Basically, day one of the season, they had their hopes of becoming state champions, and it was a long road. I think we maybe won one race all year. We had some tough competition in the Classic 8 conference. We were chasing some super fast teams, and then each week we got better. Each week we dropped time. Each week these guys were working hard day in and day out, and they accomplished their goals. Like you said, the 4x1 was the 5th fastest time in the history of the state, and they took second, so they were going against the 2nd fastest time in the state, so pretty incredible. Their 4x2 was the 6th fastest time in state history, and they were able to bring home the state championship, which was outstanding. These guys, including Austin, went down to nationals this past weekend. They competed at the New Balance Nationals in Greensboro, North Carolina. In nationals, they competed in 3 events in the sprint medley. They brought home some state medals. Look at the size of these things.
Nice hard work.
They competed in the emerging elite division for that, took 5th place, won the medals. pretty outstanding. In the 4x1, they took 8th place, and in the 4x2, they competed in the championship division, which is the top of the top in the nation, and they placed 15th. So pretty incredible accomplishment for these guys. Very proud of, and all 3 of these guys are coming back. So,
Nice.
so very exciting. The one that's not here is Austin Hewitt. He is attending Winona State, so he is up there doing some testing this week. But thank you very much for honoring these guys. Very proud of their accomplishment.
So one question to kind of give some perspective of where they started off to where you ended up. Where did you guys finish in the Classic 8 indoor relay?
Indoor, they may have won. Outdoor, probably second or third.
They're second in the 4x1, or 4x2, third in the 4x1.
Yeah.
So congratulations, that's quite the improvement. Was it new shoes or shorter haircuts? You know?
Yeah,
Well, congratulations. You're all set up over there, so we'll just do it this way. Here, you go on this side, I'll go on this side.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys. Congratulations. Congratulations. Congratulations.
And the conversation regarding graduation, I know that that is still ongoing. So I know that you know this is the exact reason why you brought that forward to the board for their consideration, and there's a team that will be continuing to work on that. So thank you. All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, next on the superintendent's report is some congratulations to the girls soccer and softball teams for earning the Classic 8 Conference Sportsmanship Award. So congratulations to the Muskego Chamber of Commerce golf outing. Annually, we send a team or 2 to the chamber to support their efforts. And if anybody's interested in joining a team, let us know, and we can look to see if there'd be enough for a foursome or an eightsome or something like that.
I'm interested.
Okay.
Just letting you know.
Golf outing
Golfing
for the
out?
chamber,
It's fun.
September 14th. The next item is the technology report to the board annual, and
Great.
Tony is here.
You know what, I think I'm going to turn down one set of lights, maybe Kelly, would you mind?
Sure.
Just
Are you going to have like a hologram in the center?
Yeah, that'd be great, yes, yeah.
Next year, right?
Not quite there, yes. If we get fiber going, it'll be good. Scenic background for you.
Okay.
Here we go. Hey.
Yeah.
Want to follow along at home with the three of you. So, all right. So, my goal again is to give you as much information as possible in a very succinct manner, noting the number of agenda items we have going on today. But so I'm going to try to read from my script. Something that is not new to the district, but always important to update you on, is the impact of Google. We're seeing that Google in 2013 we activated for the entire system. And fortunately, we've seen quite a bit of change in our systems, particularly where we store our data. You notice we have 5.7 terabytes of data, which should mean a lot to everybody. Okay, probably doesn't. But that kind of equates to about, let's see, what's a better format? 4.4 1 million floppy disks. Yeah, that makes relevance, I suppose. So if you think of our plastic floppy disks, that's how many you'd have to stack to get the equivalence of data. And then you probably wonder, well, how does that measure up to the rest of the data we have around the district? Well, we did add a new data center last year. And if we add all of our hosts that are at every single building around the district, and compare that to what we're storing in Google alone, we have 12.2 terabytes of data in the entire district. That's historically all of our data over time, compared to the rising number of 5.7 for Google. And again, I'll just mention that Google for Education allows us to be the owners of our data. We are the custodians of it, no one else is. And most importantly, we're seeing infinite data amounts. In other words, there is no cap, which is kind of interesting, I guess. But as you know it, the Google centers are way more robust than even our own data centers. So it's a good place for us to be storing our data. Moving along. Continuing to leverage Google. 12 million emails sent this year. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but either way, it's 12 million. We've had video hangouts at 7,150. It's a huge jump. And many people have asked, is that staff or students? Believe it or not, it's primarily students. It's for our entire system. So it's a communication tool. There is video hangouts, which we have featured here, but of course, hangouts in general is a chatting feature within Google. So as an IT department, we often use that as our primary communication tool. Moving into the next round, safety and security. And by the way, yes, you can stop me or ask wonderful questions I'm sure you're all dying to ask. But in the meantime, I'll continue. Internet safety. These types of posters, like Think, have often shown up in classrooms as they apply to, think before you speak, as an example. We have started to post these posters about think before you post. Is it true? Is it hurtful? Is it illegal? Is it necessary? Is it kind? I think these are good words to live by as we again work on digital citizenship and cyber safety with our students. Along the same lines of digital citizenship, we have an entire curriculum dedicated to instructing our students on a fair and appropriate use of both their technology here at home, all together, not just the tools that they use, but the internet. We know there's a lot of ways that internet can be used for good, but there's also some misuse, and we intend to address that. At the high school, they instruct in health classes. So we have it showing up in the high school as well. It's not certainly absent from there, but there is a very high-end focus. We also have parent newsletters where this information goes home to parents on a regular basis with tips of how to help manage the technology use at home, because we know there's always a lot of questions. Moving on to device safety. I don't know if I've ever really presented on it, but we have a system called GoGuardian, and it actually is a filter, a monitor, and a flagging system for use. And this snapshot was, I believe, from the last month. Let me just verify that. Yeah, 1 month. We had 2.25 million sites visited, 2,482 blocked attempts, and 44,237 flagged activities. I should note, not all flagged activities are either intentional or bad. So we have to vet them to make sure that in the context of use, what's happening. I'll give an example of something that might be a flag where there was really no reason to be concerned. Let's say a student is looking at the Khan Academy video on quadratic equation. So they're looking for results, and someone may have made a comment in the YouTube video or below that might have had an inappropriate word, and it gets flagged. The student certainly has done nothing wrong other than to view the video. There's one example. So GoGuardian is enabling us with new tools that they are rolling out this summer that allow us to better fine-tune these so we can reduce the number of flags. Either way, again, this utility is used to monitor all use of all Chromebooks across the entire system, the sites they've been visiting, the top searches, the top use, how much they're using, and gives us all that data to make sure that we're staying on top. Go ahead, Mr. Bill.
Two things. Are the students notified if something was flagged? So something that pops up tells them that
they're notified of a block, but not necessarily a flag.
Okay.
So let's say they try to get to a site that, for whatever keyword might have been in our filters as blocked, they would simply get a message that says that site has been blocked, which would show up under that blocked attempts category. If it's flagged, often it's blocked and flagged at the same time, depending on the type of site that it is, and then the flag would go to an administrator within that.
How soon after is it flagged does somebody review it?
Well, the flags go into the system within seconds, as quick as the email system can process that notification.
But is there somebody here reviewing that?
Yeah, there's someone at each building. So in other words, administrators at each building are reviewing the flags that are sent to them.
Okay.
And then they in turn can contact parents.
Do we know if there's a process in place for them to make sure they're doing that?
There's,
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure that.
yeah, it's a good question. Just to further reiterate that, we have tiers that they can be sent the information for. And also Mr. Husak, Ryan, who will be joining us a little later for our conversation, is also reviewing those for, just to make sure that there's fair, so there's indicators we can give ourselves like self-harm or high priority. They'll come to us a little sooner, or they'll be more of a high priority. They actually do threat ratings.
Okay.
So they might be a scale of 1 to 10. Obviously, if it hits an 8, that's pretty high. If it hits a 1.0, that's usually one of those comments that I was talking about.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so once again, this has been on our system since 2014, and again, with the upgrades coming down, we actually have a penalty box. That is for students who are maybe inappropriate users on a regular basis. We're able to put them in kind of that double secret probation type of area within our system. Limits them, but not completely, so they still have access, which is very nice. All right. Yeah. Cyber threats, ahead and behind. So unfortunately, we've had a few in the district. We're well aware we've had a few related to Google. And while those weren't, they were rather benign in what they did to the system. They just kept repeating the process. If someone were to open the link then copies everybody in their address book and sends it to everybody in their address book. And that was the end of it. And Google helped stop it, and we helped stop it. But I'm happy to report that only 10% of our staff clicked on the link. We received a report from Google and it told us. Now that might sound like, well, that's a pretty large number, isn't it? Actually, it's a pretty small number. And we've been doing some things that are rather proactive, I think helping our system so that we're seeing a lesser number each time. And our goal is to get that to 0, of course. But for right now, we had that outbreak with no warning, 10% of our staff. And a lot of people self-reporting, saying, yep, I was guilty, that was me, sorry about that. And very helpful utility, but certainly, again, the gains we're seeing, we use Safe Schools. Now, Safe Schools does a lot of our other training, OSHA, bloodborne pathogens, that type of stuff, things that are compulsory. So we've also added the Safe Schools training for emails and phishing, which also gets into social engineering. All things that are helpful in thwarting these types of attacks and being a little more deliberate of raising suspicion that not to open those emails, or at the very least forward them in. The classic one is, I'm forwarding you this email, I've already opened it. Should I be reading this? That's a little after the fact. So in other words, giving people the tools in advance rather than after the fact. A couple other things that are happening around cybersecurity. We brought in an IT security specialist on cybersecurity. He's a VP of operations for cyber threat management to train our IT staff, so we're a little more proactive in our work. I'm also on a K-12 panel for Marquette University on cybersecurity. I'm also developing a leadership training certification for cyber threat management, and I'm authoring an article on cyber threat management for ASA, which will be coming out in January. So, a few things happening in cybersecurity. Moving on. Phones, not as exciting as one might think, but certainly improvements that have been made. We worked with Taryn Henning, unfortunately an outgoing district nurse, but a very good one, on a MedAlert process. In other words, a button featured on every single phone number for staff members in buildings that would be able to do a one-touch dial to the health room. That would also then trigger, if the person in the health room office was not able to answer immediately, we had a call tree where we go to other recipients around the district office and high school office. So in other words, we have absolute 100%, or that's our goal, of course, to make sure that that gets answered as immediate as possible and never goes to a voicemail. The other part is we had a 911 alert. Every once in a while, 911 can get dialed accidentally, and we'll just go with accidental for now. And one of the things to keep in mind is a building AA or administrator might not know that the call was sent. So then law enforcement, as usual, you would expect, would show up to check into the call and say there was a call that originated from here. Well, they wouldn't know where it came from. So we added a feature to our phone system that would track the call so we know exactly what extension we're dialed to. Seems like an obvious piece, but we now added that in and have that feature, so it's very helpful. So, update on phone system. Chromebook 1-to-1. Yes, so our Chromebook support, lots of big numbers. I'd say some of the more important ones, nearly 3,000 help desk tickets for Chromebook support alone. It's just related to Chromebooks in our district. Nearly 8,500 loaners to ensure continuity in event of a support issue. So in other words, we pride ourselves in the fact that there is breakage, if there is an issue with the device itself, we can provide immediate response with an alternative device, and then send that device in either to be repaired or repair it locally in the district. So certainly there are other few numbers that stand out. Notice the one that says screen issues. Some have asked, well, does that mean breakage? And not always. Sometimes there's flickering, sometimes there's just a blank screen. They get filed as such. As an example, though, I'll give you one stat to give you some navigation into these numbers. At MHS, they had 169 broken screens this year. Give or take, that's about 10% of the devices in our system. So, if there's not any questions, I'll just...
What do the double asterisks mean there next to total devices repaired?
Good question.
But those are fake numbers.
Yeah.
Fake news.
It's not real, it's ignored. No, I think one of the things is we have devices that are here in our system that maybe wouldn't have a help desk ticket. And so we also have devices that sometimes go out. So I would imagine the asterisks in this case, and I can double check with our TSAs who prepared this, but the asterisks I think in this case have said that there could be some variance based on who's making the repair. So. Continuing recruitment for Chromebook support. 3 part-time employees manage our Chromebook process. That's 3,000 tickets managed by 3 part-time employees. Not only are they highly efficient at what they do and have grown in the program, they've also developed a program to interface with our email and our help desk system to automatically generate requests and communications for tracking. So we had a parent say, how many times has my child visited the tech center to get their device repaired? Those results are immediately available to how much time between repairs, what the device issue was, and it's always tracked in our system. So we know our response times, and we also know what devices are having issues on a repeated basis. So that way, if a student were to have something, we're saying this device has been on a regular basis, maybe we need to look at a replacement. So we have very great results. We've also had numerous districts visit us to tour our one-to-one program and support. Menominee Falls, Kettle Moraine, Waconago, New Berlin, Monona Grove, and Whitmore. So, just a few. Moving on. You may remember approving a data center process. We've upgraded it since. And by we, I mean Brian. The best part about that is it's 1/3 of the power of our old data center. There were literally 6 power supplies on the back of our old blade server. Now there are 2. They're also doubling the amount of storage that we had on our previous system, and we have faster data access. So, in general, a great upgrade for the district and the ability to manage all of our data. And our last system was 6.5 years old. It was time. Project updates, continuing. Wireless. We met with high school admin last summer. We realized we needed to make sure our wireless was on point. It's a difficult thing to do, but we knew we had to start with coverage. Our goal was at one point to have one for every other room across the district. Knowing an access point is about $700, it's a pretty big investment, so we have to be wise with what we do. We added 70 access points to the district last year. It was a big number, but we had to do it to make sure that our devices were properly getting to the internet, because nearly every device we have, which is a Chromebook, requires internet to get connectivity to anything. We also put in multi-radio access points. In other words, one access point. You see above where we have Mr. Bowman and Mr. Buckmaster, there's an access point in the ceiling. We're able to put in access points in our large areas, our dense areas where we have the cafeteria in the high school as an example, the library in the high school, and also 243, which is a large study hall, had 3 radios at one time in one access point. What that allows for them is that access point to help mitigate all the devices that are trying to connect, and instead of them looking for separate devices to connect, or rather separate access points. So that gives us increased speeds, more efficiencies, less downtime for the kids, particularly when they move from classroom to classroom. I'm going to have to say Ryan's name again, but all those had to be engineered. There's a thing called yelling. It's not really that technical of a term, but if access points are too loud and their beams are sending too far, they start to overlap. And then it gets confusing to a device. And so those have to be engineered to really just connect within the classroom, which is why we basically need one access point for every classroom. High school admin was very helpful with that. We were able to narrow it down to just a couple classrooms remaining where we had connectivity in every place. So all that exciting stuff. And the graph. Eventually we're going to need to look at getting rid of our older access points. They're end of life. But if you can see the graph, the 802.11 AC in green, easy to see, 1,300 megabytes per second, not too hard to figure out. And when we upgrade from our APs that are at wireless N level, when we go to wireless AC level, we have way more capacity. And the most important thing is our Chromebooks are coming with an AC radio, which means they can tune into that speed.
So where are we as far as most of our access points? What speed or what percentage are we at?
About half that are at AC. So we've been getting a 230 level AC.
How many are any at G?
No, thankfully, yes.
Tony,
which is good.
How much does it cost to hook up one of those in a classroom?
Well, technically beyond just the cost itself, which is about $700. We are just usually doing the cable to it, maybe with some installation. So hopefully no more than $50 to $100 over that. So $800 or less per classroom for installation.
Okay, and then to replace the unit, say go from an N to an AC?
Yeah, same.
It's about $700.
About $700.
Basically, that's about for the unit.
Yep.
Okay.
And used to be the latest version, now AC is, and there's different levels of AC, but it sounds like we're talking about air conditioning, but of course in this case, connectivity, which is great because there's one point where it allows the device to use more data, which means we have to channel more data into it, but that's what we're looking to do. So,
thank you.
The next thing that's important, we're trying to go back to rotary-style phones, so if you notice that's featured there, they're going to be important. Ryan and I actually did look up, you can use Raspberry Pi, which is a platform to make a rotary-style phone a VoIP-style phone. So maybe something I'm just kidding, you probably won't, but you can do it. So our goal is to have a centralized phone where we have hardware appliances on all the different ends. That's not too exciting other than to say we can make those software-based and centralized right here. So instead of having to spend the money for new servers at each location and the licensing that goes with it, we can have one centralized phone system out of this office. Which means when you log into our phone system, you have access to all phones instead of having to log into multiple servers. I know, again, this stuff is very exciting, so bear with me. Centralized security. We have buildings that are finally getting cameras for the first time, and it's actually a great thing to have, but also some of our current buildings are even getting more cameras. So we're not necessarily getting camera crazy. We want to cover every area that we can. And in doing so, we have these DVRs. Just like you have DVR television at home, we have DVRs for these cameras, and they're local. And that means there's a bit of a liability and sometimes even a space issue. And so we'd like to centralize the storage of our cameras to serve space here. So we're meeting with individuals working on the new middle school and also Mill Valley to start that process.
How far back do you keep data?
Right now it's about a month.
Is that necessary?
Well, I'll tell you what. In some places, yes, some places, no. It seems like a month in probably the high school, sometimes a little less than we'd like to see. But in probably our elementary and middles, that's probably more than that's coming from someone who's not a camera specialist, but more experience in that regard. So wireless updates. As I mentioned before, nothing too new there, that we want to not only add the number of access points we have, but also upgrade them to AC. And then ideally, we will be looking at a self-provision fiber optic network. I'll spare you the details now. We'll get to that later. Moving on. Qualtrics. We have a few software systems in the district. This one, we're hoping can really advance our dashboard systems for departments. Not only that, but we're looking for a way to bridge the gap between operations and academics and student results. And that's been very difficult to do because most systems are designed to be leaning more towards the side of student performance. And while that's a very important metric for the district, so are the operations side of things. The other thing is, right now most of our departments are hosting most of our data manually in spreadsheets. And while we get really good at spreadsheets, the manual part is probably the issue. And And some of our dashboards are much larger than others. And when they are, it's just a lot of data to manage. And the fact is, when we try to find this information, it's not always in one place. So we started on a quest to find a system that would help serve our needs, particularly to have manual data become automated data, and to be able to have that in a visualization tool that can be centralized and easy to do. And so we did a search. We started that, 6 months ago, something to that effect. It was quite the journey to find and vet who might do well by that, because the education market, we know, isn't the primary focus for many software systems, particularly when it comes to operations. So we found Qualtrics. They're in 6,800 school districts. They work with over 2,000 universities. They're also part of MPS and UW-Madison. So 2 very large organizations that we feel have done probably a really nice job vetting as well. The other part is they also specialize in data collection and statistical analysis. You've heard us mention Hanover Research. And actually Hanover uses one of the features in Qualtrics called Statling. So we're able to actually start to compare data for positive, negative correlations as an example. So it doesn't mean that we become the data specialist that Hanover might be, at least not me personally. But Qualtrics can be a dashboard system, a data collection system, and a statistical analysis system. So we're hoping there'll be a mention a little more later, and I didn't want to mention too much now, but pretty excited about the potential opportunity to work with Qualtrics. Try to stay the script, so appreciate everyone being with me. I wasn't trying to be too monotone there, but if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Well, thank you, Tony.
Thanks,
Appreciate the updates.
Sure.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Okay, the next item is middle school schedule update.
And this is real quick. Just wanted to come back and remind you that we were researching different middle school schedules. We started that process at the end of February, beginning of March, and started by surveying our teachers and our parents to ask them for their feedback regarding our current schedule. And we've been working on it since. The only updates I have for today are just to highlight the areas of focus. Of course, the vision of the graduate research that was done last summer and what continues to guide our work is a central focus, because we want to make sure that we are preparing our students for college, career, and community. Guaranteed curriculum for all students outside of core subjects, while ensuring and maintaining band, choir, and world language options for 7th and 8th graders. We have about 30 more hours of work time scheduled on this project this summer, and we hope to present to you at the end of July, beginning of August. In addition, an area of focus for us is to revise and update our Encore classes to really meet the needs of our current learners. And those course revisions or new course proposals will be going to the CPC, the Curriculum Planning Committee, in September.
Thank you for the update.
I have a question, or a comment, I guess. So when you're looking at, and if you don't know, it's funny, if you could bring this feedback back. When looking at the Encore classes, I think now in the middle school they have, there's 4, right? Or is there, so when they're in 7th and 8th grade, or 6th, 7th and 8th grade, they take an Encore class. And then, is there like a study hall then that goes with it, or is the Encore classes are quarter-based, right? Is that the idea?
They meet every other day for a semester, so they are a quarter long. Currently at 5th grade, they have Phy-Ed, art, music, face, computers, and tech ed as their elective classes. Currently, 6th grade has art, Phy-Ed, music, band, choir, general music, a face class, and tech ed option. And then in 7th and 8th grade, it really varies depending on students' electives for band, choir, or a world language.
So then if somebody was to take, so generally is the issue, or the issue, but with those wanting something like band or choir, that there's not a time slot available for an Encore, is that usually the issue?
Right.
And
Yep, outside of the state-required classes, like Phi-Ed, for example, a 7th and 8th grader has room for 2 electives, and because world language meets every day, that takes the place of 4 quarter-long classes.
So if you do band and it's every other day, that means, so because when we went to that, then is there a way to match the Encore to that every other day? Do we currently do that, or do we
Yes.
not? Yeah. So then they would be able to then.
Correct. So if somebody was banned every other day, they would have 2 more openings for different
For the
electives.
Encore, okay. So the real issue was, well, for some, was if you took band and choir, you had, but then don't you still end up then with, because if you had band every other day and choir every other day, you still have a period, or 2 periods for Encore, right?
Yeah, I think where some people were wondering how they could get more electives in was the students who took band or choir every day, because that is an option for students, and those same students that same population who took a world language,
So
which
it's the
was
world
also
language
every day.
So that's the trick. So it's that the world language is not able to go to a quarterly, so to speak, right? That's
Correct.
the issue.
And we could reduce world language to go every other day, but then we wouldn't be able to help students earn that first and second year of a world language and get high school credit for that. So some districts, for example, will offer like Spanish 1 over the course of 7th and 8th grade. So they take like half of it 7th grade, half of it 8th grade. But those students are only leaving middle school with then 1 year of a world language. But we offer 2 years in the middle school, and those 2 years both count towards their high school credits.
So those existing 2 now do, I think we had that a while back. It did, it didn't, it did again, right? It was like, and then we agreed to.
The high school credit piece?
Yeah,
Mhm.
so right now you can, if you have foreign language now, which would at Baylor would be Spanish and then French, right? Then you could, if you took 2 years, you could transfer those 2 as fine art credits to the high school, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the option, I guess, right? So then, because I would be open to doing an option like that, depending on what the feedback is, I guess. Or is there an option that, I don't want to take it, is there an option, can you give parents an option where you would, if you want to, in this way, if you want to do 2 credits of fine arts, then go ahead and take foreign language as it's currently done, or can we offer an alternative, have a foreign language, maybe it's only Spanish, where it meets, where you go on that track, and then you just, that way you get your Encore, you get your band and choir, but you're only going to get 1 credit.
For high school.
Yeah, because I don't envy your spot, but the middle school on this, I tried 3 years on this board to grasp this, and it is a very challenging, just 3 years to get in. But thinking about it, I would have probably opted for, looking back, if the option was available, I would have opted for the every other day Spanish for 7th and 8th grade, and then took advantage of some Encore or choir and band. So just a thought. Thank you though for.
I will take that back to the team, and where we are right now in the process is we have some pieces that we know are non-negotiables, and the pieces that are required by the state, and the pieces that are important to our community. And so we're running through the FTE scenarios to make sure that we're budget neutral. Sometimes when you look at something another district does, you might say, wow, that's really great. Why don't we adopt that? And when we started doing that, we realized, oh, well, that's only a 6A building. We're a 5A building, so we've got more students. Or that building only has 500 students. We have, 2/3 more. or that building only has, they don't offer quite the extensive electives that we do, or their student-teacher ratio is 35 per classroom, so there's different variables, and so when we start to run those numbers is where we're finding out what we can and cannot do. And so what I can offer to that group is, based on our FTE, which we share world language teachers with the high school, and we have a teacher who travels between the 2 middle schools. So depending on enrollment every year, there's a lot of moving pieces with those particular individuals. But with our current state, we could run some scenarios to see if that every other day option is a possibility.
I would be interested to see what that is. And when we run the scenarios, do you run them, so for the middle school, do you run them 5, 6, 7th, and 8th, or just 6, 7th, and 8th? Because we don't do, does the middle school say, does Baylane share resources with the elementary school?
No.
Okay, so you do, so it's 3 years, right? So you're running just the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
Well, we are including 5th grade because for example, our Encore teachers, tech ed, music, face, those teachers, we need them available to teach our 5th grade students as well.
Okay.
So we have to include kind of all employee groups.
Okay, so it would be the flip. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I agree with Chris. That sounds like a major headache trying to get everything satisfied. Do you think we'll be able to do something where we can do an every other day Spanish and a everyday Spanish and a every other day band and everyday band? Is that feasible, or are we just kind of biting off way more than we can possibly achieve?
I think I'd have to have the team run that and see what it looks like. There's a lot of pieces up in the air juggling, and so, but that doesn't mean it's not possible. We have students who travel to the high school, so that might be an option for people who want to go every day. Maybe they're high school people, and the ones who want to go every other day maybe stay in the middle school. That would be one solution. Perhaps we can explore flipped learning for some of those students. So we'll look into what some different options are. And maybe it's not a solution for 18-19, but it's something that we continue to study for a solution in the future.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Questions? Enlightening. Okay, on-site clinic annual report.
All right, so we have been open, our clinic has been open for just over a year now. It opened in May of last year. And we're happy to report on a number of really great things that have been happening as a result of the clinic being open. If you're like me, you just want to see the numbers first, so we'll start there. There are a few attachments, but if you want to open the one that says post-clinic versus baseline results.
I'd love to, except my computer is not talking to the access point.
Can I give you a hard copy?
Sure.
All right. So the first thing that we wanted to do, so what's really hard is when you look at return on investment in this particular area, is you don't necessarily know what people would have done had they not utilized the clinic, so you do have to make some generalizations and assumptions, but we did look at a number of factors that we believe led to clinic usage and how it's doing really great things for our system, especially financially. So the first box, which has blue in the headline, it says metrics. So what we looked at is all of our covered employees and retirees on our health plan and looked at the per employee per month cost. So how much the claims and having the plan for those employees cost us. So in 2015-16, we had about 400 covered employee retirees. That's not including their dependents. That's just active employees or those retirees on the plan. And we paid about $1,215 per employee per month. The next section shows in 16-17 what our claim costs were, and so what we were able to do was separate out our health insurance data from the health clinic data and then combine those two so you could see it both ways. So if you look at the claims cost box, you'll notice that we had about 397 employees covered, and the per employee per month cost was $963. And again, that's about a 21% reduction. in cost from last year to this year per employee per month. And then we wanted to factor in the cost of the clinic so that you could see even with the clinic that we were still seeing a savings. And so the next two boxes shows those health insurance claims that were shown in the previous box, plus the cost of having the clinic, including the health risk assessment costs that were run as part of the clinic. So you'll see with all of that included in, we're paying about $1,027 per employee per month, which still results in a 16% reduction in our overall health insurance cost. So that is simply the numbers just to show you where we were last year to where we are to date this year in health insurance costs alone, and then we incorporate the clinics so you're able to see absorbing those costs. It does go up slightly from not having the clinic, but again, we're still saving around 16% per employee per month. Any questions on that portion?
Maybe I'm jumping the gun, but what can we do to improve the use of the clinic? I mean, are we at capacity for the clinic right now?
No, we are not.
Okay.
And we can talk a little bit about that.
Okay,
Yep.
I jumped the gun, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Any other questions on that? Otherwise, we'll go down to the... Yep.
Can you give me an example of how are we saving money by the employee going there? Give me a hypothetical hypothetical,
Sure.
how we're actually seeing a savings.
Okay. So on average, they say a primary health care visit is approximately $200 a visit.
Okay.
And so if we looked at how many people are going into our system, and you'll be able to see over the course of the year, it was about 591. If we take 591 people and they go to see their primary care physician, it's costing about $200 per person. If they are coming to the clinic, we're paying to staff the clinic, regardless of who's coming in, how many people are coming in. As long as it's within that 20 hours, we're only paying a fixed cost, with the exception of prescription.
Okay.
So if we are absorbing those people into the clinic costs, we're not paying double. We're only paying the clinic cost, and we're saving that $200 per employee on the health insurance side, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And so if you get enough people to utilize the clinic, and what we started to see is if enough people are utilizing the clinic, we are paying that fixed cost regardless of the people coming through. They're not seeing their primary, even though they're still getting the care that they need for that primary care visit. And we're saving that on this health insurance side. Because we're self-funded, which is really one of the reasons we did that in conjunction with the clinic, is because any cost that goes through the health insurance plan is a direct cost to the district. There's no markup, we are the insurance company. So that would be one example. Another example would be just a prescription costs. So we look at a number of generic prescriptions that we offer. We have a few brand name, but we're able to buy those at such a reduction, almost it could be upwards of a 300% reduction in cost because we're buying them direct as opposed to somebody going to Walgreens running it through our health insurance plan, and there's a premium markup to pharmacies for the drugs, and then we're paying the $5, $10, or $20 for the employees pay that, but we're paying the difference in those costs. If we can buy the prescriptions directly at cost, we see a direct saving because they don't have to run it through our health insurance anymore. And those costs are assumed in our budget projections that we make for the cost of what the clinic will actually be. Does that help a little? Not so much?
Not so much, but that's all right. We can talk about it later.
Okay. Well, maybe we can run through some of the other numbers, then we can come back around. So the next section shows how much we pay per member per month for various care. So, for instance, inpatient care, emergency room care, other outpatient care, professional care. And professional is a specialist, what would be considered a specialist visit. So what we have listed here are the various costs associated with those care options per employee per month for 15-16, and then showing in 16-17 those same costs. And so you'll see that, for instance, inpatient care, we've seen a 65% reduction in cost for inpatient care, a 29% for emergency room care, and then professional 9%. Now again, what's hard is that direct correlation to those numbers are a direct result of having the clinic. However, if you look at some of our patient results and you look at some of our urgent care costs, people, if they don't have the clinic, they would have gone to urgent care, or they would have gone to the emergency room, or they would have utilized other services that would have cost money and contributed to the increased cost in our health insurance plan. And we are seeing a reduction in those costs overall. When you combine that with utilization, and you look at the numbers from 2015-16 compared to 2016-17 in utilization, I have various ones listed here, but I'm just going to go to the primary care visits alone. So in 15-16, we had about 1,412 primary care visits. In 16-17, we had just under 2,000 visits. 591 of those were to the clinic. So even though we've seen a 38% increase in primary care visits, which is what we want people to be going to, we want them to be getting those wellness visits and those preventative care visits. We've seen an increase in those, almost 38%, yet our costs are significantly less this year than they were last year. So to some extent, there is some correlation, and it's going to be hard to tie those directly to, because you can't assume if a patient goes to the clinic, if they didn't go there, they would have gone somewhere else and what those costs would have been. But we know the average cost of various cares in southeastern Wisconsin for emergency room and urgent care and primary care, and those types of things. So we are seeing a reduction in health insurance costs overall. We talk about our self-funded health insurance plan. We set our premiums to run at about 100%, so we know if we paid in everything we budgeted, we would be on target for our budget. Right now, our insurance costs are running at just around 80%, so we're actually seeing a significant savings in overall cost just to the health insurance plan. Excellent.
Any questions? Are there any other documents that you'd like to review?
And then I just wanted to touch on the patient survey results. So after every visit, patients are asked to complete a survey. They're not required, but we do prefer it just because it does give us that opportunity to get feedback and improve on various things. But what I wanted to do is skip down to the bottom box that, again, talking about if the Wellness Center wasn't available to me, I would have gone to. And then it lists the various places that people would have gone to. Indeed, maybe this helps a little bit with your question, because what you can do is look at, on average in southeastern Wisconsin, the various costs of these visits. So, 60% of the people would have gone to primary care, 6.8% would have gone to a specialist, which means if I'm not feeling well and I self-select a specialist, it might not be the right specialist. And then I might have to go to somebody different, which is going to double the cost of my treatment. And then also urgent care is very expensive. And so if you look right underneath that box, the approximate savings to our health insurance plan is about $72,000 as a result of people coming to the clinic and using what we're already paying for as opposed to utilizing those services elsewhere, using average cost over in southeastern Wisconsin. And then again, just that satisfaction is high with the users.
Now, is that savings to plan taking into consideration the cost of the clinic, or?
It does take it takes into account.
And that's out the cost of the clinic. Okay.
So we save $72,000?
Well, in theory.
In theory, right. If those people would have gone to where they said they were going to go.
This is not just, this is what these visits would have cost, it's what we did
Well,
actually.
if these people who chose these options would have gone to those options instead of the healthcare clinic, or vice versa, if they would have gone to these options, it would have cost our health insurance plan approximately $72,000 more for them to utilize these other services than use the clinic that we have provided to them.
Okay. Well, what's the cost of the clinic again per year?
We budget about $300,000 per year.
Okay. And so the 72, it would have cost about $372,000 for these people, for these patients to go somewhere else? Or are you saying it costs us $300,000, but we save $72,000 for that?
That's a great way to look at that. I have to think about that for a second.
I mean, I know it's the first year of operation, but did we save money overall, or did we lose some money overall?
No, we're saving. I mean, if you look at the numbers above, the per employee per month costs are actual costs. So last year, we paid $1,200 per employee per month. This year, we're paying about $1,000
This
per
year.
employee.
Right, but that's not just the clinic though. That's
The 12.
overall.
That's just overall.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. But when I look over here, it looks like with the clinic, it cost us $1,027. And I know this is just based on,
No, that's healthcare plus clinic. Those are actual costs.
yes.
So we saved 16%
So we saved
from...
16%.
Right. But we would have
last
saved
year.
21 if we hadn't had.
Correct.
Okay. So it is it did cost us a little bit of money. I shouldn't say a little, it did cost us some money to run the clinic.
Our savings were less.
Yes. But this is the first year of operation. So.
Right.
But we may not have had the claim costs at $963 if it weren't for
Right.
the on-site clinic.
If people wouldn't have had the clinic and they would have chosen other options, that $963 would have gone up because the clinic costs have to go somewhere if people are going somewhere.
So you think about cost avoidance, so you avoided so much cost.
Thank you.
That's the way I saw it.
Thank you. Okay, that's making more sense now.
And then the last document is just something that Jenny, our physician's assistant, put together, just looking at, and again, this goes back to, and I guess the survey as well, if the clinic was not available, 45 people wouldn't have gone anywhere. Now, what that could result in, we don't know. But it does say, give some value to the fact that people are getting the care that they need when they need it. I won't read through all of these. You can read through, but these are some of the things that the clinic did outside of just the general care of people. But with the health risk assessment, I'll just give you an example. 26 people were identified as pre-diabetic. They didn't realize that they were pre-diabetic. And if you look at the back page, on average, diabetes can cost about $7,000 per person per year just in care management. So if you can prevent getting to that diabetic state, obviously the health insurance plan can see cost avoidance. Chris, I'm going to go back to your words. Also, some panic calls, what they call them. We did health risk assessments, and there were a number of people, about 19 people, that had to have immediate outreach as a result of what they found. So some was diabetes, some were cholesterol, some was blood pressure. And so Jenny was able to get them in to see somebody if she couldn't help them at the clinic to make sure that they were getting the care that they needed for some of these higher risk areas. And then finally, we had, Jenny had set up a mammography bus to come on site to the district. And we had 28 people participate in that. We probably would have had more if we would have had more slots available. But the results of that were read to people right away. And we obviously don't know who participated or what, but we get the results of that. And 5 of the 28 people that went in actually had to be referred because there was something seen on their mammogram that they should have a specialist look at. So hopefully it's nothing, it's just precautious. But if that was an opportunity, one person did say, I would have never gone in for a mammogram, but because it was here and it was easy, I took advantage of it. And she was one of those 5 people. So that information is really good to know because we are able to help with some of that preventative care for people.
Was there a cost to the employee for that?
No. Again, we have to look at what we would pay through the insurance company to run everything through the insurance, which is us. Mm-hmm. And if they go to a doctor, mammographies can cost X number of dollars on average, depending where you go. If we contracted out with Columbia St. Mary's for the bus, and we were paying a fixed rate per person, which was less than what we would have paid if it was run through the health insurance. We made the cost of that. Okay. And so in either case, it would cost us, depending on where people go and which way it's run. But we were able to contract and reduce rates because of the bulk, processing happening all at the same time.
And make it convenient.
They are radiologists that they were sending things to? Or
No, there was somebody on site doing the readings and reporting out the results immediately, which was absolutely wonderful from what I've heard from people as far as feedback goes.
And I know you've said this before, I just want to confirm that all that liability rests within Columbia St. Mary's for the reading of those?
Correct. They are a third-party contract, and they work directly with HealthStat on results, so we don't see them, we just hear out, things that come back. So yes, we transfer all that.
So we didn't charge the employees anything, but we had a savings because we brought the bus in and contracted ourselves. What was the cost per person? Did we have a savings on that versus if we would have just told people, if they would have just gone to
I could get those specific numbers.
I'm just curious.
I have the cost of the contract.
I mean, I think it's a great thing. I mean, as 5 people that we may have to solve a huge problem.
Well, the cold facts on that are, it's not we solved the problem with them, is we saved a lot of money on it, because there are reasons that insurance companies require, or not require, that they will pay for preventative things like colonoscopies and breast. It's a lot cheaper to pay for it and catch it early than to not catch it and then have, not catching it at all is the cheapest. But, sadly, but, catching it at an inopportune time where your medical costs easily run into the $500,000 range.
I'm just curious financially how productive it was.
I could get
outside of that, it's great.
I could get an average cost. The problem is every charge is different depending on where you go. So I could say on average in southeastern Wisconsin, a mammogram costs X.
Right.
But which is the number, the numbers.
But it's not. But it does. That's, you're missing the point on it. Mm-hmm. It's not. The statistics will show you that we're long-term better off, cheaper off having everyone.
I'm just curious as to is this something we should expand on for other areas?
Well, yeah, we should try getting everyone to get all this preventative stuff because it's going to save us money.
And I'm just wondering,
it's always going to be cheaper.
That's what I'm trying to get to. How productive was this financially? Not just for the preventative.
I don't know that you're going to get to Julie's point though. Is I don't know that you're going to give an accurate number. She's going to make a
none of this is
it's not worth the time and effort to go through and get the numbers. What I'm getting at.
Okay.
But Brett, to your point, there was feedback from people that if we would have known that this was, because we did this and it was about a 3-month process. We put information out to people. If you're interested, we'll bring in a bus. We wanted to test it out. We did get feedback that probably double the amount of people would have participated if there would have been another bus available. We just didn't have that. Or people had said, I already went in for one and it ran through the health insurance, but I would have gone to the bus if it would have been available. So what we're going to look at this year is if we started earlier, communicating out and getting more feedback on participation, we could maybe have more than one bus available or do a number of days just to generate participation.
Well, plus you by filling up this time, you've actually created demand for the next time. Right. They know they're not just going to say, I'll schedule that later. They're going to see it come out, the ones that couldn't get in, and, I got to sign up for this right away. So it's the theory of the smaller baseball stadium. You just create demand and you sell. You get more people served in one.
Any other questions? Thanks for the update. Congratulations. Yay. It's a great first year. Okay, next item is 3-year professional development plan.
All right, I'm going to project up on the screen here.
Do you want to use that microphone?
Yeah, the 3 that we have here. All right. This microphone is down too. Okay, I'll just come up and speak. Oh, okay. Thanks. I was going to airplay up, but this is my one shot, right?
I'll work on putting it up in front.
Okay.
It's not working.
That's okay.
Try one more time for me, please.
Sure.
Is it on your machine now? This looks like it just worked.
Yeah. It's right
try
there.
that first and then...
Okay. Is this thing on? Okay.
Is it? I don't know.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay, great.
I feel like it's a stand-up comedy act. I know. The last time I had a microphone in my hand, I was karaokeing. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was yesterday.
So I just wanted to speak to our professional learning plan, which our district has committed to for 3 years. And it really is centered around the vision of a graduate and preparing students for college, career, and community readiness. And using best practices and research and what we know works to help every student learn, grow, and succeed. And so I'll speak to what this graphic is in a minute, but I want to first go through how we got to where we are today. Last year, we had our literacy and social studies committees meeting through the course of the year, and we had a fairly large group. There was about 60 literacy teachers district-wide and about 45 social studies teachers. And because the nature of social studies being so heavy in literacy, we actually combined those two groups of teachers to do the research related to literacy so that we could really talk about what's called disciplinary literacy rather than content-specific or English class literacy. So what you'll find in the document is as that literacy committee was meeting, we first conducted research. And we had presented some of the John Hattie research and Hanover research, I believe, back in December at a board meeting. And we looked at best practices and we looked at effect sizes. And we came up with a really long list of best practices. And what we realized is a lot of the best practices are completely interwoven with strategies that we've learned through AVID over the years. And that led us to bringing AVID in December for about 100 teachers to sort of trial out the professional development and then pilot some strategies. And I think you recall one of our board meetings where teachers and administrators were talking about things like Socratic seminars or Cornell notes, academic conversations, close reading. That was the work of the Literacy and Social Studies review committees and the people who piloted some of those strategies in their classroom. And then we came back and we said, well, how can we really focus on some of these strategies? Because the list was really long, and we wanted really high-impact strategies that applied to every teacher. And we narrowed that list down and really determined what our focus was going to be. And the team decided which strategies were most applicable to all teachers. And we felt like it's really awesome work, but it's a lot of work, and we wanted to make sure that it was aligned to other things going on in our system. While that was happening, personalized learning was also growing, and there was a really large focus on it last year because we had a huge cohort of teachers go through professional learning related to personalized learning. And so what you'll see up on the graphic here is just the growth of personalized learning since its induction. And just as an example, at our elementary level, about 50% of our teachers have gone through personalized learning training and are implementing. And we felt like we're kind of at a tipping point right now where we have more teachers who are personalizing learning in their classrooms than not. And we want it to become the norm. And so we looked at how can these best practices in literacy and the best practices in personalized learning really align. And that's where we found ourselves creating an alignment to educator effectiveness, which affects and impacts all teachers. It's our improvement model that has been adopted by the state. And we use what's called the Danielson framework, which are just indicators of best practice. And teachers are not only self-reporting on those, but then every 3 years they go through a formal evaluation cycle on those. And because that impacts 100% of our staff, we wanted to find out ways where we could really align all of this work through that model. Jeff, did you want to speak to this slide?
So while all of that was happening that Christy just mentioned, we were collecting some baseline data around educator effectiveness scores related to the 22 components that are in the framework tied to teacher evaluation. And as we were looking at that baseline data, we started to notice that there were areas that we would identify as opportunities for improvement, and that they would become priority areas for us to focus in on. What was interesting is those areas that were identified as opportunities for improvement were also aligned to those high-impact literacy strategies that Christy was actually just mentioning. And those 6 components are identified right there, which really don't mean anything to you. It's a number and a letter, but to our principals and to our teachers, each one of those components really is a high-impact teacher effectiveness strategy that, if implemented well and proficiently or even in a distinguished way, they would impact student learning in significant ways. So as we continue to collect that baseline data, as we identify those opportunities for improvement through that baseline data, again, areas that we wanted to see our teachers continue to grow in, we had some research done by Hanover. And we wanted Hanover to identify if, in fact, those particular 6 components that you see in blue, if teachers are proficient or distinguished in those particular components, is there an effect size on student learning? And through the research that Hanover did, they were able to identify that, yes, indeed, if teachers are proficient or distinguished in these 6 components, it will have a greater impact on student learning, because we looked at and compared student outcomes with teacher effectiveness. So we realized that there is an impact on students. And really trying to understand and wrap our heads around all the research, all the literacy strategies, the professional development, we identified that we can't just do this well in 1 year, but instead it's going to take 3 years for us to be able to develop teachers, to be able to check in on how proficient they are, to see how effective our professional development is. Again, that can't be done in 1 year. It has to be done over time. So we're going to narrow that focus, have it be a 3-year focus, continue to keep all of our efforts aligned so as to simplify and realize an increased impact on student outcomes.
So our theory of action is that if we focus professional learning over 3 years on specific research-based K-12 strategies to develop student agency and literacy skills, aligned with statistically significant educator effectiveness components, then our student outcomes will increase. And that comes to our one-pager flyer, which is also a document connected to the agenda item today. But this information is just really a communication piece for all of our staff members so that they can understand what learning we're committing to for 3 years. And we have kind of it broken up into 3 categories on the right-hand column. The first category are the practices that we're committing to over 3 years. Repeated reading, note-taking, questioning, and academic conversations relate to high-leverage practices in the area of literacy. And literacy is not just reading and writing, but rather speaking and listening as well. Student-led goal setting, student voice and choice relates to personalized learning. And so we're going to continue to grow our personalized learning, but really focus in on those 2 pieces. We wanted to make sure that people understood the why behind these particular strategies and how it connected to areas that they themselves track and continue to develop themselves in. So we wanted to highlight what the research says about the 6 components related to Charlotte Danielson's teacher effectiveness. And then the last piece is just the professional development outline for this next school year. So at our Summer Institute on August 16th and 17th, we're bringing AVID in for 100% of our teachers, and they will be receiving professional development in the area of the repeated reading, note-taking, questioning, and academic conversations. What's really neat about that is it's going to be age-appropriate and content-specific. So our kindergarten teachers will be attending a session that's called K2 Foundations, and they learn how to really create a foundations of these skills and for these skills. And our CTE teachers, career technology education teachers at the high school, they're going to be attending a session specific to their content area. Science will be attending a science session specific to those pieces. So it's really differentiated for people based on their grade level and what subjects they're teaching, which we felt was really important, not only for the buy-in of disciplinary literacy in all content areas, but really giving them the tools and strategies that they can immediately apply in their classroom. And so, as Jeff said, we're going to commit to this work for 3 years, and we've collected some baseline data, and we'll be continuing to monitor that over the course of 3 years. for not only our own teachers' proficiencies in these areas, but our student outcomes as well. The graphic on the left-hand side is our visual to help kind of bring all of this work together. So on the outer part of the circle, we have our eye on the goal, which drives all of our work, our professional development and our coaching, which helps provide assistance and guidance, and then our professional learning communities. Those are called PLCs, and that's at the teacher level, where teachers work with each other to help strategize and problem solve. And so that's really our support systems for this work. Then moving on into the middle, our student profiles, the personal learning goals, reading and note-taking, and listening and speaking relate to the strategies that we're providing professional development on, along with what components of educator effectiveness are aligned to that. But our real goal is to prepare students for what they need for when they leave us. So it's our vision of a graduate and what we want all kids to have when they leave. Any questions? Thank you. I'll give kudos to Lou McBain. She's the one who created our visual, and I bet she went through this 20 times. A lot of feedback was given. The whole cabinet provided input on the visualization, color choice. We knew what we wanted the content to say, but we really wanted it to have meaning and support work that we're doing and make alignments to that work. So it was a group effort. Thank you.
Yep, we are hosting the first Run for Education 5K run here at the district. It's a three-part series. The other two districts participating are Della Vendarian and Kettle Moraine, but we are the first, and so we worked with Key Benefits, who is actually our actuarial company, and they went out and grabbed as many sponsors as they could, and we received some wonderful donations, not only from partners of the district that we consult with, but also overall just from local businesses within Muskego and directly outside of Muskego that have participated to provide some great door prizes. So we'll have some information available. You can still sign up if you'd like to participate. You can do that through Friday. If you would like to just come and help out a little bit, we are still looking for a few volunteers if we can get them. Otherwise, the money is being raised specifically for to help contribute to the master planning projects, the outdoor activity, field concession, all of that, that we are looking to raise money for. But then also some of our staff members are looking to raise money for bullying prevention, and so they'll have some information as to how they would utilize those funds. They'll be selling T-shirts. The fire truck and ambulance will be here for the kids to go into. We'll serve popcorn. I think I'm making the popcorn, so we'll have popcorn available and some great door prizes. So very excited and hoping to see people there. And Stubby, the mascot from Marcus Theater, will be there, as well as Marcus giving away tickets, movie tickets and things like that. So very excited. We have about 50 people. We have about 48 people signed up. We're hoping for 50 to actually participate in the run. We are going to do a once around the track run for kids, and they also get medals for completing that. We have 21 kids signed up, and only 2 are over the age of 8, so that should be fun to see. It's a run walk. Yes, you can do either. And we partnered with the city, and so we are actually going to be going throughout the city, and the police are working with us to help block off the roads on Woods and Racine temporarily for the run. So great help from the city for this event as well. It's the children's run, I believe, starts at 9. Let me just look that up, though. And then I think the run starts at 9:30. It'll all start at the same time, and then the times will just vary. Yep, it's this Saturday. It starts at 9 o'clock. The 9 o'clock will be the children's run. 9:30 will be the 5K, and we'll be right out here outside of the stadium at the main entrance. You can go to runforeducationwi.org. And I believe we also have information on our website that people can get to the link as well. Mm-hmm. Okay, so discussion item A, middle course description book. As part of our PDSA, which is the Plan, Do, Study, Act process, our Grading for Learning team has been in the study stage of examining proficiency-based grading. And we are in year 2 of implementation, but for some teachers it's been year 1. All of our Encore teachers just started proficiency-based grading this year. And through that process, we conducted a survey for both teachers and parents regarding how well we're communicating students' learning. And there's 2 documents attached here. The first document is called Middle School Grading for Learning, and that document highlights survey themes from both parents and staff. What we learned is that many parents are a bit confused by Infinite Campus, and they don't really know how their students are doing. They want an actual report card, something where they can actually have ownership of something. They also felt like our grading scale did not allow for more rigor. They didn't care for all 3s converting to an A, and they felt like their children had low effort. Staff themes were that translating proficiency to letter grades was manual time consuming, and it felt like inconsistent. People were literally counting the number of 3s, the number of 4s, going back to the conversion chart, and they just felt like they wanted it to be black and white. They wanted consistency, but then they felt like it was really rigid. Staff also felt like parents were confused by Infinite Campus, and that might be contributing to a lack of involvement from parents. And staff also wanted more rigor. They didn't care for converting all 3s to an A. Also saw student effort decline, and they wanted the ability to use more pluses and minuses to accurately communicate students' understanding. So the committee took this information and came up with 4 recommendations. The first is to provide greater clarity regarding how to translate proficiency to a letter grade. And the interesting thing is that
proficiency-based grading and traditional letter grading are really two very different things. And so because we're trying to marry them, they're not meant to fit together, which is why we're having a bit of a obstacle making it work. But we want to make sure that we're using best practice, but still communicating how students are doing to parents. And we want to make sure that the communication is clear. And so the first recommendation is to remove the interpretation column on our current grading scale. The second is to make adjustments to Infinite Campus so that it's more user-friendly to parents. What we'll be researching, and we believe it will work very seamlessly because the high school has a similar setup, is to only set up 2 categories for parents to look at. One category would be summative, and those would be items that are graded or contribute to an overall grade. And the second category would be formative, and that would be for things like homework or quizzes or practice items. That way parents can just look at the summative area to learn what the current state of their student's progress is, but they still can see how the student is doing over all areas. The third recommendation is to create a conversion scale to take away from that the manual grade conversion for teachers, and to allow up-to-date, daily progress. If a parent would like to see how it looks on a daily basis, parents can get that information right from Infinite Campus. And then the last is to provide Infinite Campus training to 5th grade parents at open house. And we realize that as parents are moving up with their children from elementary to middle school, the elementary doesn't really utilize Infinite Campus like the secondary level does. And so we felt like that was a real gap area that we're going to try to provide some training. So page 2 of that document has our old interpretation of scores document, which is found in our course guidebook. And below that is our new recommended format. You'll notice that the proficiency descriptions haven't changed. So students are demonstrating a thorough mastery of content standards, represents an A in both categories. But what we did do is we moved the proficiency down to all A's and B's, so that parents know that if a student gets a 3, they're proficient on the standard, but they may not be demonstrating a thorough mastery of content, and kind of leaving that for the rigor that people were desiring. And then on the very last page is a conversion scale, and this would be used for ongoing up-to-date communication as well as determining a final grade. And it's what people are more comfortable with. What it's going to do is take an average of the summative assessments and then naturally convert that into a grading scale. We wanted to make sure that the A's and B's had an equal weight in terms of their span, because a B is proficient. And so some people were wondering, well, why is the A span so big, and is it rigorous enough? And we felt like, yes, it really is. Because we're technically a B is proficient on the grade level standards. And so we wanted to make sure that the span was equal across the board. So what will happen in Infinite Campus is, as summative assessments get put in, Infinite Campus will automatically average those into a number on this conversion scale or somewhere within the range. And then parents can see up-to-date information about how their students are performing. And we feel that this is something that they're going to be able to really identify with because it's familiar. Averages are familiar, letter grades are familiar. And yet it still complements best practice related to proficiency-based grading. And the second document here is just the academic guidebook for the middle level, and it changes the language related to proficiency-based grading with the new scale and the conversion chart. Any questions? was just going to say, we have resurfaced that conversation as well related to the timely feedback, and brought it to administrators' attention, and we're also putting it in the employee handbook for the 18-19 school year, 17-18 school year, sorry. So, yeah, just to make sure that we are drawing attention to it and communicating. So the letter grade is based on a certain percentage. So 90 to 100 is an A, for example. But proficiency-based grading is related to grading on a proficiency level on a standard, and it's not a point-based system. But we're trying to marry those two. So at the middle level, teachers have rubrics on a 4-point scale to show the level of mastery of a standard. So to keep it as simple as possible, a 4 is the student is exceeding the standard, a 3 is that they're meeting the standard, a 2 is that they're almost there, a 1 that they're not there. And so it's really about the students learning and grading the learning rather than reaching for what point do I need or how many out of how many do I need. It's a focus on learning and trying to de-emphasize the focus of earning points, so to speak. Sure. No. The standards come from both state and national documents. So, for example, the Common Core state standards in the area of reading, writing, speaking, and listening, those are standards that are set across K-12 for all subjects in the area of literacy. The ACT standards are also incorporated even at the middle level. That was actually some work that was done with our literacy review committee this year. And so that work has now shifted the expectation for certain standards that they're grading on. So the requirements for the standards in terms of like what is meeting the standard and what's proficient, that's dictated by both state and national documents. We don't set our own standards. Yeah. We also have the Wisconsin academic standards for areas like social studies, where there's content standards outside of the skill standard, which would be the Common Core. Yeah, the standards aren't set up quantitatively. They're set up by skill. So it's that a student is proficient and able to do a skill. So, for example, one of the standards in the area of reading and writing has to do with students pulling evidence from text and then being able to justify a claim. And so it's about a skill as opposed to how many you can do. Yes. Yes. Yep. So what you're familiar with at the elementary level might be language like exceeding, meeting. That's they put an E if you're exceeding and M if you're meeting. a lot of school districts with proficiency-based grading use that language as opposed to an actual letter grade. But because we're trying to communicate it in a way that people understand and they're familiar with, we're converting it to a letter grade, which, we have made the new one more rigorous. K-8 uses proficiency-based grading, but the way that they're communicating the grading is different at elementary and middle. At elementary, the language is about meeting or exceeding the standard, and at the middle level, it's converting it to a letter grade, and at the high school level, it's a point-based system. The spirit of proficiency-based grading does not include giving letter grades. Yeah. Another solution would be to remove the letter grades, which actually was one of the recommendations from the committee. But we just felt like we weren't sure if parents were ready for that particular move, because some of the comments on our survey and the feedback was about preparing students for high school. And so I think some people do value that and feel like it gives them it communicates better what the learning is. Right. I agree. We didn't use the language of being advanced, but a 3 is that they're demonstrating proficiency of a standard. A 4 is really that they understand it at a thorough level. So that would be the advanced. But mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. With the state testing. Yeah, we could. We were really, because students and teachers are getting really fluent with the language that's used here, so we didn't want to change the language of what meeting a standard means, simply because change is not always easy for people. So it's just a little tweak. You know, we're in the study stage of our PDSA process, and we didn't want to completely overhaul it. We were trying to make some subtle changes to help provide clarity.
right? And then you start having that. So just because as Bob said, I would go through here and see, in the old way, I just need to get, if there are 8 metrics, I only need to get 90% or 92% and I'm an A, but maybe I didn't get 3 of them. So under the proficiency grading, I get it. It's forcing people to hit each of those in order to get that 4. But I just need to see that, and then I see that feedback, right? Because my daughter should get some feedback on what she did on each of those metrics, right? I mean that. So I would just offer you that going forward to, beat the dead horse on that, but the feedback. Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
You got everything you need in this?
So it'll come back to the board in its current form in July for approval.
Can we have an explanation on what the asterisks mean again? On the new conversion scale?
Sure. The row that has the third row down that says span with just one asterisk is the span of a solid A versus the span of an A including the A minus.
Okay.
And if you move over to the B, it's B plus, B, B minus, so it's incremental and the span from each one of those, but then the double asterisk is the span of all B's together.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Safe travels.
Thanks.
All right, moving on with resolution action items.
President's report.
Oh, yeah. I have none. Board member reports?
Just want to congratulate the girls soccer team for making it to state once again. I went to the game, the semifinal game, and it was a good day to play hooky. Took my daughter and a friend up there, and it was good, and it's great to see the success that they're having. And just want to congratulate all the. I don't think we've met since graduation, but I congratulate all the graduates. It was a good ceremony, and Mr. Petfalski is getting better at public speaking, and that was good to see.
Thank you. Any other board member reports? Any committee reports? We have a resolution action item 7A, naming of schools. Brett?
Well, I need to read this part. Okay, motion to approve school names as follows: Muskego Lakes Middle School, Bay Lane Elementary School, and Mill Valley Elementary School.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Any comments? Quotes for prosperity?
No, I did a little research on it. I was a little underwhelmed at first by the new middle school name, but further research I did on it. Muskego Lakes was actually on the intermodal trains that would take people from the city out here. It said Muskego Lakes on it. And the further research I did on it, Durham Hill, for example, the new middle school isn't in the Durham Hill area. So that makes no sense, and based on the fact that we have had a grand total of, well, the next complaint we get about the names will probably be the first complaint that we get. So
we did get one reference. We did get one reference that someone was concerned that when they hear that, they think of a golf course, the golf course and a bar. My response is, hopefully, after this name sticks, when they hear the golf course name, they'll think of the school. So.
Great.
Do we have any idea of what the mascot are going to be, or when do we go over that?
The next stage.
Yeah, that'll be the next. That'll be the next thing that these staffs work on.
Maybe a goals for
The only thing I would offer there is that because of the plural, Muskego Lakes, you almost need a compound, like test, because if you end with an past, you almost need a compound like timber wolves or something, where it sounds kind of weird. So I had three people emailed me on that. I was like, okay. And then I started saying it, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, if you say Mosquito Lakes Panthers.
Oh, the waves.
Maybe, or like wave, or something.
Ooh, nice.
I said I would bring it up. Sorry.
Did you do?
Thank you.
Any other duties that need to be started? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you, man.
We have a name. That's exciting. Yeah, I guess 2 new ones. Moving on to 7D.
Motion to approve school lunch prices for 2017-18 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
So every year we have to do the USDA equity in meal pricing, which requires our paid meal prices to get to follow a certain average that is set per the USDA, called the USDA weighted average price requirement. And so what we are recommending in order to comply with the calculator is changes to, and again we only have to do this for elementary and middle school because those are in the National School Lunch Program, is to make a 5-cent adjustment to all meal types with the exception of middle school lunch 2, which would be a 10-cent increase. And these are more the specialty bars, the pizza and those types of things. They're a little bit more of a premium compared to the standard meal that you get. And those prices equate to the $2.75 per meal average.
Questions, comments?
I'm not sure how they're related. Free reimbursement rate minus paid. So what they're saying is the more free and reduced we have, the more our price, the less the price increase is. Or I'm not following how that relates. It just seems like we're always raising the price because it's the FDA that's.
We have to. That's the law.
Their rules.
Yep.
But I'm not sure how that equation works out.
Oh, you figure out the government.
Is it like the school funding?
Pretty close to me.
No, it's not. It's not quite as complicated. They just want to make sure that as they're providing, from the government's perspective, free meal pricing or reduced pricing to help supplement those costs, that you are not creating, that you're creating equally, you're getting closer, so that the government is paying.
So if the government's going to give you money, you better be keeping up with taking money in.
Yes.
Because otherwise you're relying too much.
Otherwise they're supplementing your program.
Okay.
And they expect the paid to be. Thank you, Lisa.
So this is basically the minimum we can increase so that.
This is the minimum we can increase. If we would have kept the middle school lunch 2 at a 5 cent like everything else, we would have been 1 penny below and our contract would not be approved. Trust me.
We're doing it, sweetheart.
Yep.
I understand that, but I'm just trying to follow the form.
Like other means.
Pardon me?
But the feds would like you to go much higher, is the point.
Absolutely.
Well, they don't want us to be supplemented, free and reduced to our own program, our own pay. So.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Moving on to 7C, sale of Muskego Elementary property.
Motion to approve the sale of the Muskego Elementary School property to Corporate Investments, LLC, at a sale price of $1,400,000.
So
Second.
Discussion?
So this is basically what the board approved the last counter offer, and it was accepted by the buyer. So all terms are as we have discussed. And this, the approval this evening would allow them to move forward with the work that they would begin to meet the contingencies. Yay!
Now we may start getting. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Moving on to 7D, key performance objectives for 2017-18.
Motion to approve the 2017-18 key performance objectives objectives as presented.
Do I get a motion?
So moved.
Do I get a second?
I'll second.
Discussion?
No changes from last meeting.
Any discussion from anyone else? Questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. 7E, resolution authorizing and approving property schedule number 3 to the master tax exempt lease purchase agreement with Key Government Finance, Inc.
You know, motion reads exactly what you just said. Resolution authorizing and approving property schedule number 3 to the master tax exempt lease purchase agreement with Key Government Finance, Inc.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? This is a release for the technology, correct?
Correct.
Yep. Any questions from last meeting? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving into 7F, insurance change renewals for 17-18.
Motion to approve the district's property and casualty insurance with M3 for 2017-18.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
So this is, the board saw a glimpse of this. These are the final numbers that came in for renewal. The one change that you will notice is under the data compromise cyber liability policy. We are recommending an increase to a separate cyber liability policy that is more inclusive than our data compromise. In the past, it was just if something were to impact your data on site, it would help you with recovery and things of that sort. The cyber liability is actually moving us into some of the things that Tony had mentioned in his presentation, but moving into, focusing on if somebody were to try to actually steal your data, or they get into, what is it called? They get in and they lock it down. Ransomware. Those types of things. So this policy does allow us to have an increased cyber liability coverage, and I can give details if you'd like, but I did do a little bit of write-up in there just to explain a little bit more about it.
What's our coverage on that?
It's $1 million
So
per incident.
It's all well and good that we would have insurance for ransomware, but now that takes this out of our hands to, the insurance company's got to either approve paying it or telling us to go fly and then rebuild our data. What's our, how long are we backed up internally that if they were to break into our cloud and lock us all out?
Remember those 4 million floppy disks that I told you about? That's where we're storing our data? No, actually, great question, Rick. We are backed up into multiple locations. So we have many cloud-hosted entities. For Skyward, as an example, Infinite Campus is local, was backed off remotely every night to the Twin Cities. We have our remote backup system, which is off-site. And then we also have Google Cloud for our content as well, which is backed up in probably 10 different locations. I'm not saying it's actually 10, but it's probably a lot. So we have the ability to recall our data in multiple locations, even if it's being held ransom on someone's desktop or laptop.
So our key pieces of data, well, they're in all these different clouds throughout the world. Do we ever pull any of them onto, 10,000 floppy disks and stick them in the corner just in case we have some?
It's a good question. Because we have what's called metal backup, so there's actually just a system with hard drives in it that is pure metal. It's not, as an example, tape, which is a previous version of backup. So that's a secure system just for the backup itself. Then it's also on the server itself. And then also, so that's one example, and then off-site to our other locations.
So you got a number of redundancies.
We're very redundant, which is great. We need to be there. In fact, even might need, I know it sounds a little crazy, another layer of that, but at the same time, we feel very confident in that. Julie invited both Ryan and I to discuss with M3 a little bit about the coverage was about, and we did want to detail that because we want to know, do they have mitigation entities in place that can help us? And so we're actually going to follow up with them to determine a plan for that too. So not only will the coverage give us that dollars and cents coverage, but also allow us to develop a plan for recovery.
So my last question then is, if we're so well backed up,
do we need it?
Do we need this? Because what are the odds in 10 years that you're going to go through $100,000 worth of loss?
Yeah. Well, and keep in mind, there are at least 10 different facets of the coverage. Ransomware is just one of them.
Yeah, I understand. So, a good backup will mitigate
Much of it.
Much of these different things that can pop up.
Yep. It's also a bit of the liability that comes with social engineering and some of those other tools as well. I think that's probably a big part. Because quite honestly, to your point, we can have all these great systems and processes in place, but when social engineering is injected into the process, that can defeat all of those things.
So they'll cover us if one of our employees sends out a check because I signed off on a PO supposedly or something?
Sure. That is one of the areas of coverage.
It is.
Anyone else have any questions?
He's over.
Okay.
Can we get this light turned?
Maybe follow up.
He was disappointed it wasn't on, so he's like...
He didn't want to listen to insurance.
Trust me, if I sat next to it, I'd want to fuck her.
He likes being here.
Look at him.
He likes me. See?
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Moving on to item 17, full cost contract.
Motion to approve unpaid or construction complete project estimation for the Mosquito High School pool design in the amount of $15,500.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Same thing we talked about it earlier today.
Same thing we covered in the committee of the whole, just making sure that we have accurate pricing that reflects the project and we're not over-designing the project and having to work backwards from there with the budget that we have.
Do they have any kind of liability or, I mean, obviously we're not expecting to become nuts on, but if they're like off by 300%, we just paid all this money for them to be on, I mean, besides, you know, their name.
Yeah, I don't believe that something like that exists, but...
Okay, just curious then.
Yeah.
Good question. Fine, have a question? No. Share with them?
We were just, awesome job you're doing, right?
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. We're going to 7H, Developers Agreement with the City of Muskego.
Oh, good. See, now it's on.
Motion to approve the developers agreement between the Muskegon Norway School District and the City of Muskego for the construction of the new middle school.
You want to make that motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
So this is the developer's agreement that any developer would have to undergo with creating a development within the city. Our attorney and the district's attorney crafted this, and our attorney feels that it's favorable for what we're needing. Some of the bigger points are that the city will pay for the easements required for the water connections, both north and south, and future recapture agreement will be created if anybody desires to hook up to our water source through the Highview connection. And additionally, one other thing in the agreement is that we will construct the short run from our school to Tudor Oaks, and the city will reimburse us for those costs. So they've been amenable to the projections of those costs and all of the work that's already gone into it, funding for that part of it.
Any other questions, comments? The only question I have is, what was the technical one? Can you sign these agreements?
Always.
Yeah. I don't believe you can, but...
Well, you can give me authority to do that.
That's fine. Guess anything else? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Moving on to 7I, sponsorship agreements.
Motion to approve revised sponsorship agreement with Encore Corporation.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
So at the last meeting, the board actually did approve the sponsorship agreement. However, after consulting with the attorney, there were still some questions that the board had about what happens at the end of the contract as it's written. And so I just wanted to provide clarification and make sure that this was written the way that the board intended. So when we talk about the right of first refusal for each of these areas, the board does not have the ability to say no to any proposal that the IMPRO may come back with. If you do end the contract with IMPRO and you don't provide sponsorship opportunity for anyone, it has to be you can't provide sponsorship for anyone. So you can't say no to IMPRO and then go look for somebody else. If you find a sponsor, IMPRO has the right to match that and get their name there first. And I just want to make sure that that's okay to have that information in there. That's the first piece. The second piece has to do with the additional $200,000. If you approve the language as it was proposed, with IMPRO having the option to continue the stadium naming rights and Woods Road entrance signage for 5 additional years, when we get to the end of the 10 years, you cannot say no to this if they're willing to do it. It's essentially locking in a 15-year sponsorship with that additional $200,000. I did talk with Rick a little bit before the meeting and just wanted his thoughts on it. And one idea that he came up with was to agree to that, but maybe put in that IMPRO would have to let us know 18 months in advance if that's in fact what they wanted to do, so that they're committing early, so we know that if anybody approaches us, we just have the ability to say we're committed to this and this is how we're moving forward.
Or vice versa, that we know we have to start looking for someone.
Correct. So those were the two big items that I just wanted to clarify before moving forward. Is everybody okay with the right of first refusal? I mean, it locks future boards in to agreements, and that's kind of the concern that we brought back, but also at the same time, you're receiving a very generous donation with the intent. Right. I mean, it's a lot of money, so you just want to make sure you're okay with it.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to 7J, gifts, grants, and bequests.
Motion to accept with thanks gifts as noted below. Pool donation, $100,000.
So moved.
Second. Discussion? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let me just update that should be from complete office of Wisconsin.
Correct.
Yes. It wasn't listed on me. Just want to make sure they get the shout out for it. Thank you.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Moving on to discussion items. 8B, 2017-18 budget. Anything new or replacement?
Standing
Any questions
item.
about the budget? Hearing none. Moving on to 8C, self-provision fiber optic network project.
So this is a new item. I'm kidding. I won't try to overkill it. Just a few updates, then get to the point of why we're here again talking about this now. Originally, we had thought about bringing this back after E-rate approval. We did meet with C.G. Schmidt, you're all familiar with, and they shared with us their goal of having a connected line by June of 2018. Something that could be fully tested and operational at that time. Not to be too nervous about that, but certainly interested in finding the ideal opportunities to be able to get connectivity to this now Muskego Lakes Middle School as soon as possible, as well as the other entities of the district. So this isn't coming much earlier than we probably would have. We had originally anticipated a 90-day window, which most likely would have put us into August. What we're still waiting for is E-rate updates. And so I just wanted to jump on to present to our studio audience at home, even though you all have that presentation in front of you. So the page 1, again, is just a quick update. We were proposing to the board in September of 2016. The board approved the engineering in November of 2016. The last update was in April, and there we did our winning bidder that we selected, that we were intending to file our E-rate documentation, and then still holding on to the contingency for the board approval in spite of that contract. The last part is we were updating on considerations. So once again, what's been very clear and apparent is the need to meet that June 2018 deadline for live connectivity to the new middle school. The other part is our E-rate updates. That would be the next slide that says update on E-rate application process. There we have that all forms have been completed and submitted for the E-rate group, which is, again, part of the FCC, that we still anticipate at least 90 days for the initial response. We noted last time that in the year 2016, many school districts did not receive responses even within the 90-day window. So there was no guarantees of that time. That is just the proposed window that they offered to us. At this point, no further documentation has been requested from us at this time. At the same time, no other details have been shared on the status of our request. So unfortunately, we're not necessarily at a standstill, but we're at a sit and wait at this point on E-rate. The one thing that I want to confirm with everyone is, if we were to approve and still break ground prior to receiving E-rate approval, those funds still could be applied if we do in fact receive approval. So even if we were to start the project, which I realize, that's why we're here talking, once again I want to note that E-rate would not be something we would lose out on if all of a sudden they give us approval and they're like, well, because you've already broken ground on this process, you can no longer accept those subsidies or those funds. So I'll touch base a little bit on that one more time. There is the timeline for consideration. Some of this is very obvious. Once again, in April, we brought to the board an update, and there we talked about our E-rate obligations and our funding requests. June, we're here because we're looking to review this agenda item one more time with the board with the intent of looking at a July approval, if possible. August, we'd like to see an anticipated potential E-rate funding commitment. Again, Dean, there are those asterisks, and I actually have written down what they mean this time, which is a good thing, right?
Thanks, sir.
So yeah, in this case, we are, held to that 90-day window or more, whatever they decide based on the number of applications they're processing. Next part is the double asterisk, is the contingency upon contractor availability. Now, Mr. Becker and Ryan, why don't you guys come join me? Mr. Becker, you had reached out to Intercon. They are very aware of our current process, both what we're doing today in terms of discussing this again with the board, but more importantly, the notion that if we move forward with them, we'd have to secure their time as well. So the earlier we can move forward with this process, the earlier we can get Intercon scheduled to complete this work, if it is something we go forward with. The next part is on the substantial construction completion. Our goal would be that May of 2018, most of the fiber would be laid in the ground. Substantial means that there would certainly be some cleanup after that would occur in the process. And then again, meeting that final deadline with C.G. Schmidt of testing connectivity for the new middle school, amongst other entities of the district. Of course, our goal is not just to connect the new middle school, but to create a fiber network for all of our buildings. And that, of course, includes the new buildings, not the ones that we're closing. I know we've said that before, but just to clarify. Looking at our project cost slide, without any E-rate, inclusive of our project costs total, we're looking at a $974,000 amount. Now, keep in mind that the best part of our bidding process is due to that being, thank you for setting that up so well, providing great detail for our contractors to bid. We're able to see about $688,000 in savings on the front end through the bidding process, which actually exceeds the amount we were going to see in savings for E-rate. So while I realize that doesn't necessarily mean we don't want the E-rate process, it was nice to see those savings on the front end. Also, if E-rate is approved, we still stand to see a $337,000 subsidy to be applied to this amount. And that could be applied basically regardless of whether again we break ground or finish. And Dan, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, a couple of notations, not to be too obvious, but just to reiterate, that because the district is able to take on the capital lease costs within the technology budget, the district is able to pay for the total cost of the lease project without using fund balance. On the next part, once the lease is paid off, again, there could be a variance of between 4 and 7 years, depending upon whether or not we would receive E-rate subsidy. The district will have access to an interconnected fiber optic network without any leasing costs throughout the lifespan of the network, which is a really important point. Not to get too far ahead, but if the board is willing to consider and comfortable with that, our next steps would look something like this. We bring leasing documentation with a final resolution to the board in July. That would allow us to then secure interconnected construction as well prior to that, so getting them on, us getting into their books and getting a timeline for their work. And also the intention to break ground as early as fall of 2017, again with the goal of being completed by May of 2018. The why now really doesn't change. That's a carbon copy, with the exception of bringing this to you 1 month in advance, noting our goal of that June 2018 timeline. So those are the steps that we're talking about. Again, our goal of, thank you, our goal of having the approval so we can move forward with this, the ability to still retain E-rate subsidy, recognizing that we did save $688,000 on that bidding process on the front end, and our goal of ultimately knowing that we need connectivity to these new buildings regardless, particularly the Course Middle School, but also the goal of having all the centralized phone, data, and security for here at the district office. So I know I've said enough in a mouthful. I don't know if there are any questions or thoughts.
I know you mentioned it when we first started talking about it. What's the criteria for getting the
E-rate? Great question. I'll give you the cursory thought, and Dan, do you want to add anything to that? We are eligible to receive a discount of up to 40% on the services. And at this point, there was what's called the E-rate modernization order, which allowed the funds that the FCC collects, it's really USAC, USAC, which is not a tax by any means. It's a fee that's put on every phone bill, as an example. That collects into a large fund. That fund is used to offset the cost of, in this case, fiber optic networks that we can, in terms, build ourselves. So that wasn't there originally. It was just as of 2015 that was even a possibility in the first place. So our eligibility is already that the number of free and reduced lunch students in our district who qualify for free and reduced lunch sets the bar for what our discount levels are. The higher the number of families who qualify for free and reduced lunch, the higher the discount is for that.
So they put it like priority with the...
Correct. Yep. And so I wouldn't say we're as necessarily up against others for it as much as our discount is already set as we are. So we followed a very specific criteria for meeting the demands of that E-rate application, if you will. And so I can't tell you anything more than we've met those needs, and if they have any questions, that we would simply respond to them. So, I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, I think it did.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, so just guess
come back in July, if that sounds okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Discussion item 8D, Parks and Recreation Facilities Use.
You can go ahead.
Oh, good, sorry. I just wanted to talk with the board a little bit about some changes that have happened over the last 24 months. And they're all noted here, but some of the bigger things that have changed between the city and the school district are the city's request to terminate our facility use agreement, resulting in the loss of cost sharing for the athletic complex, which is everything west of this building. The city withdrawing from caring for Mill Valley and Bay Lane baseball fields, which has resulted in us leasing to another club. They implemented or started to implement rental fees for the use of Lake Dunoon Park for Lake Dunoon Middle School. So essentially, if we're going to go on to that park, they're going to charge us some sort of fee, whether it be restoration fees or rental fees to go and use their fields. Excuse me. They also withdrew from cost sharing, and a good instance of that is the tennis courts. So working with prior administrations over there, they had agreed to do half of the cost to resurface our tennis courts, and to be honest, they use them about as much as we do, if not more. So they withdrew that. That was about $35,000. We did, in turn, create a rental structure for $10 per use, which netted $4,000 this year from them. However, they used to pay $13,000 just for the athletic complex alone, and that's not with cost sharing and all the other things that we've in turn taken on. In addition to that, we have allowed feeder programs to request facilities at the same level as Park and Rec, so they can now have that equal opportunity to use the facilities. And in order to make that happen, we host a meeting during the summer with all parties, and we come to an equitable calendar. And to this point, we've always been able to do that the last 2 years. So after pulling all the data and looking at it as best as possible from all the operational costs for the Park and Rec to use our facilities, the ones they do, the square footage they do, for the time that they do, the actual operating costs are about $14,805. That does not count large construction projects like the tennis courts or them using our exterior facilities, because those are hard to put a dollar value to when you don't have utility bills tied to a field or a court. We also do not require the feeder programs or Park and Rec to have custodial staffing present, so if you were just an average Joe and wanted to rent our building, you would have to have a custodian present. In addition, to rent the gym would be, say, $100, plus you're paying the custodial fee too, so we're a far cry from those organizations having to pay even close to what anybody else would have to wanting to come in here. We do accept donations in lieu of any fees from the feeder program. So you guys may remember that they helped us restore our gym floors. They've purchased us lawnmowers. They've credited us seed on our accounts over at Horn Brothers. So they do work to actually make whole, some of the things that they use, which is great. After doing all the math, a more appropriate fee to reflect that actual operating cost for Park and Rec would be closer to $12.50 to $15 an hour, which would really meet that $14,000 fee. And I have noted our current fee structure is attached there. Just wanted to open up to you guys, since there has been so many changes over the past year, if there was something you guys would like us to explore or had any recommendations on your end.
Is this thing no? No. That's some colorful comments.
You're more than welcome to. Say them.
I just want to move forward. I'm done.
Brett, where's Park and Rec on their policy right now?
Lord knows. I can ask Tammy and get an update.
Oh, you were.
Did
Last
time
I
getting
did.
board approval, Park and conservation approval?
That's what I'm referring to. Where are they? You were at the meeting here.
It was not at the meeting. So.
What? Yeah, it was.
Which?
The last meeting.
Oh! I don't know what you mean.
The one where they want to charge us for late dinner.
Yeah. Needs to be, we voted not to charge for the regular usage. I'm sorry.
Did you vote or defer it?
We voted. It was brought forward.
Because you didn't vote on anything, you deferred it.
Yeah, right, we did. I'm sorry, it's just, I don't have my notes on. Yeah, we would.
They held off. You guys held off until we have to meet this meeting. I guess part of what I'm most frustrated at, for one, is just this escalating between these two entities. And I agree, Chris, I just want to move on to a point. But I also want some comments to go back to them, and first being of which, I'm reading a quote from the mayor from last fall when we started this whole building project, and she said that we cannot treat you differently than any other private developer, which leads me to think, why are we cutting them any deals on the use of our classroom? Because if under that mentality, we have a price list, and let's just do that at the Park and Rec. I don't care if it's $100 a night, it's going to shut down their program. Now, I'm not suggesting we say that tonight, but maybe I think that's a message that might go back to them. And we might want to take this message back to the board for the next meeting, Brett, because I think they need to know, at least that's where I'm at. I'm not sure where the rest of the board is, but I'd like to hear some comments about, do we just keep on taking this escalating shift of their budget through ours, throughout not only this Park and Rec thing, but their whole building project? It's getting tiring.
It has gotten tiring. It is tired. It's
that we actually let them out of a contract for these athletic fields that were, when developed, co-developed between the two entities, were supposed to, those agreements for maintenance were supposed to go on for perpetuity of the properties. They would not have been developed together or at all, more than likely, if we didn't come to some agreement. So we cooperatively agreed to build the sites to the level we did. The fact that they weren't, in their mind, getting their use out of it, I blame themselves, because maybe our staffs weren't playing together. I'm not saying you were or you weren't, but quite honestly, none of us were asked about it. And, if our staffs aren't playing well together, and I'm not saying they were, but if that's their contention, they had an obligation to bring that to us, but the first thing they brought to us was a termination of the agreement. And then since then, they want everything for free, and they want to charge us for everything. And one of those things is the use of the park, which my message back to them for the park for gym classes, you can try charging us what you want. It's a public park, we're going to use it. If it's reserved that day for something, we'll find other arrangements. It's getting tired. They have concerns about fields being overused. We can take care of that. We can rotate where we're using it, things like that. But their cry of we have a cost is nothing compared to the cost that they have to us. It's not even a fraction. And I'll say it out loud, and I hope people are watching. This mayor and administration's use of cooperative use between the largest taxing entity in the city is not serving her constituents well at all.
It is not.
There's such a vacuum of leadership there when it comes to stuff like this, and it's getting tiring. It's time that somebody either draws a line, or we just decide to play it out until her reign is done. Move on. But one way or another, I think we should take some direction. So
it's very hypocritical too, because on one hand, when she shows up to the groundbreaking and she speaks so highly of the schools and how important they are to the community and this and that, and then out of the other side of her mouth, she's doing things like this rental fee at Lake Danoon Park. It's, I think a line has to be drawn in the sand myself.
Well, where would that fee go? So that would be a Park and Rec. So Park and Rec would be the collector.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So anything that is proposed is really through Park and Rec.
It's proposed and approved to the board.
Okay.
And right now the board is, I'll say, blindly following staff's recommendation for these charges.
So the city itself, so it's under that coffer, then no different. I mean, I would follow your lead, have Brett take that back. Generally speaking, if it's a matter of equity, it's facility use versus facility use. If to use this facility, we get charged, well then, there's that equity that we need to apply back. So if they set that standard, that's how they want to play ball, and we simply follow that. I don't think it's escalating anything. It's just playing by the same standard that there's setting, and we would call it equity. Why would we not do that? So,
if I can make a recommendation, it would be to send the message back that we're comfortable with the current fee schedule that are in place, meaning no charging for the park, no charging for the cross country. Whatever charges we're charging them at the $10 an hour or $10 per room lease, we're comfortable with that. And if they aren't comfortable with the current agreement in totality, meaning if they change any part of it, we're going to reevaluate our fee schedule, and I guess we can point to what Jeremiah came up with to start.
Okay.
That way at least they see where it might go at a minimum.
They're just under some impression that they can recapture some of the money that we charge them, but not realizing that we're charging a fraction.
There's no equity between their amount of use and our use. Because we could just look the other way.
That's what Taven kept falling back on was, well, you charge us. It's like, well, it's a world of difference.
We have costs.
We have big costs. I mean, there is a small cost, but as you pointed out in the meeting, we can move the kids to another part of the field, so it's another part of the park every day if we have to. We're not go out on the rainy days. I mean, there's ways we can help keep the costs down. The costs aren't that significant compared to what we have, so they're just not getting that. At least not at this point. So I think some of the board members got that idea, but they're still kind of like, well, can't we just do a quid pro quo? I mean, we get to use your stuff.
I mean, can't you run the numbers?
Well, we know the numbers. How many hours did they use this last year? 8,000, 1,800.
1,800 hours, or
So
it's about 400 events.
I mean, you know, just showing her behind the scenes that, or maybe just meeting with her, I don't know. But for me, it's just, I was fine with the way that things were.
We all were.
Yeah, and if, it's really not a matter of...
Prior to the, I'm going back to, you know, when we had the joint use facility agreement, actually, we weren't even charging what we were supposed to. They were supposed to be charged a third of the cost. You know, we were only charging them like $13,000, which wasn't a third of the cost. So they were getting a discount for a number of years.
I mean, if this is how the city proposes to basically fund or assess fees, we can, that's fine. We're just simply reciprocating. There's no escalation in that. We're just reciprocating back. If they want to keep the same fee schedule, then would reciprocate back. I don't see it any way than that. I'm fine with that. I don't want two disparate ways of charging. If you don't have to, I would just simply, this is how you'd like to do it. We'll come to terms, and we'll do this same thing. I think that's the message we have across. So, why are you doing it? Okay, you are. Fine. Here we go.
I'm afraid where it's going to lead if we don't stop it, and I think the city's got to take the lead in stopping this, is the rec program is going to start going away. They're going to start cutting out a lot of these programs that are operating on the fringe, and it's going to start...
I guess maybe that's a conversation you could have privately with Tammy, possibly reach out. You're in a good position to probably do that. She may appreciate that. So.
And I know my daughters, they realized the rec programs a lot when they were younger. And I know some of the programs would not...
The community likes the rec programs.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
And a lot of those would not have been possible if we'd have charged a lot of money. You know, if we'd have been charging what we should be charging, as you said. It wouldn't have been possible because there were small classes, but because the school district stepped up and allowed the city to use the classrooms and other places, these small classes were able to operate. And it was a great time for my kids. I just hate to see something like that go away in the city.
I mean, I thoroughly believe that there's schools by the day and community centers by night as much as possible, but when it's not being equitably reciprocated between the two parties, the message has to be sent, I guess. So, did Tammy actually reach out to you directly on this?
Yeah, we went back and forth, and one of my points of contention were that she's charging us for the facilities 100% of what she would charge somebody else to. So I said, well, in turn, why aren't you charging us 10%, given that we're charging you 10% of what we would charge anybody else? She kind of said it wasn't up for discussion. I noted just what you said. I said, well, let the board talk this one through, and her reply was that it's not up to the board, it's up to the Park and Recs committee as far as the fee structure. So.
And you haven't had a discussion with her since the last part?
That was,
that was before that last meeting then? Correct.
And, I would just say that this isn't escalating, or I'm not even going to pretend to be the Park and Rec board. We're responding in a very professional, manner, and this is how they wish to do the fee structure. Fine. Then I don't need any editorial. I don't think we need to try to editorialize. Just this is it. Let them do that.
But
take the high ground.
Yeah. So I guess are we in agreement to the message back is we're comfortable with the current fee schedule, and if they choose to change it, we will evaluate where we are from our fee schedule at that time.
Yeah, I would just say that we'll
leave it at that.
And we'll move on. Then we'll see.
Do you want? Are you going to go back, or do you want? Well, that or we'll take it back to the meeting.
Well, next meeting.
Yeah, you can take it back to the next meeting, or I can reach out, let her know where we're at. So, whatever direction you guys would want to go.
Sounds like we already. Oh, you mean from the city?
Contact. Yeah. Are you guys okay with that, or feedback you want to add? you guys got to implement these.
I guess noting the first thing that you said about playing nice, I just got to say on behalf of our staff, we've done everything that we could to be collaborative through this entire process.
And I wasn't saying you weren't. Yeah. I'm just saying the accusation was made that when they requested fields, they could never get them.
Sure.
And I don't think that was necessarily from your staff, but probably more from, XDs at the high school, and I don't know if that was true or not. I can't necessarily say it was.
Yeah.
It's quite honestly, in my opinion, it's irrelevant because the terms of the agreement were being made. And
I think your point, though, Rick, is well taken. If there was a problem, the way to address it is a discussion, not a decision.
Right.
Yes.
So the same holds true. If you want to talk about it, we can talk about it. But if they're going to make decisions, we'll make decisions also.
So I think your guidance.
What?
I think your guidance is quite good.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Moving on. Item 8E, Fund 46 contributions.
So every year we come to the board, since 2014 when we established the Fund 46 fund, which again allows us to put money from our current budget into that fund, expense it on our books now so that when we use it in the future, we don't have a tax levy impact like we would using fund balance. We always bring that forward in June. However, this time I just wanted to let you know that we have about $120,000 in there, and my recommendation would be to not put any money into it this year, only because if we do, it sits in there until 2020, and with all of the projects that we have ongoing,
I have a little bit going on.
we may want to roll anything that we have fund balance, or at the end of the year, into fund balance as opposed to this fund, and then we'll pick it up again in the future. So just my recommendation.
Sounds okay with me.
I think that's wise.
I agree.
All right. Anything else? And to item F. Quadrics. Just looking at my quadratics.
Quadratic equation. Tony mentioned this in his summary, and
I'll add a few more details, and feel free, other members of the cabinet, if you'd like to as well. So once again, we've identified a need within our system to kind of unify our dashboarding processes and also make them more streamlined, similar to how we've done in board docs. We spend a lot of time in preparation of these meetings, and so it's very important to us that we're doing that well and that it's not a casual process. The same is true for our dashboarding systems, whether we're using that data to share within our own teams, across departments, across the district, or even back to you as members of the board. There are many features within Qualtrics, and like a nice DSLR, whatever camera that would be, that would have tons of features on it. We're going to focus on a few that are priorities for us. Again, one of the things that I'd mentioned was the dashboarding feature. And throughout this process, not only did we identify a need, but we asked our vendors to take some of our current dashboards and actually to take them and say, all right, so what could you do with the current ones? And again, I'll use mine as an example. Mine pulls in from about 8 or 9 different sources, and that's a lot. And it's a very manual process, one that I've become accustomed to. But even through Google Docs, it's something that's hidden in my folder, and people get to it. Yes, they can view my dashboard, but it's certainly not something that I'm as proud of as I'd like to be. And I realize that I could expand on it as well if we start to automate the process itself. So, as I mentioned before, Qualtrics isn't something that randomly we happened upon. We did hear about it from other entities that we had asked about for use. And yes, we did learn more about some of the larger entities like Milwaukee Public Schools and University of Wisconsin-Madison. Now, again, I don't want to keep keying on those, but those are 2 very large systems that are spending way more money than we would on the implementation. So they need to make an appropriate choice. As I mentioned before, we did have 3 vendors that we started to zero in on. One of those was one called 5 Labs, which isn't far off from Forecast 5, a system we have in the district. They're very early on in the process, so not the maturity that we were looking for, and didn't have the same operational impact that we would see in Qualtrics and or IO Insight. We then looked at IO Insight, and we noticed a considerable cost difference. So we did feel that, and I hope I'm speaking for everyone, we did feel that Qualtrics, again, was the better of the 2 options, and of course also the less expensive of the 2 options. So we're ideally looking at an opportunity to come back to the board in July, and then also, if approval were to come, start the early implementation processes in August. so that, again, we're looking at a timeline of, it's certainly going to take a few months before we're all set up and ready to go, but Qualtrics is ready and waiting for us to work on the implementation processes, including all of our departments. I realize there's more data to add, but what I'm just going to start there is there's a bit of the backstory, how we started, how we found Qualtrics and a few of the other vendors, why we felt Qualtrics was the better option of the three that we were considering. As you might expect, this would need to be something we'd pay for out of our current budget that we'd find a way for. I don't want to put words in Julie's mouth, but I believe that's the case. And last but not least, we do see it as a great opportunity to unify all of our dashboarding processes, as well as to utilize some of the other features within Qualtrics. I don't know if there's anything else to add from the other individuals.
If this would get approved and implemented, would it eventually save staff time?
You certainly could equate it to that. Our goal is, again, to automate the data so it's not flowing in and out. Most of us are responsible for our own dashboards, so it would not only just save staff time, but the people who are sitting at this table, would see that as well.
Makes it centralize it. Manipulate it easier.
Yes.
Just two questions. One, you answered, I think. Current budget,
It would be out of the current budget. We've been looking for something over the last year, and so it's part of the plan as we move forward to incorporate it into our budget. And looking at, as we incorporate something like this, if approved, there are other areas that we may be able to take away from and not have to continue contributing to, so streamlining.
We own the data.
Thank you. Great question. Yes, we would.
Can it fully export out into common formats if we decide to go on with the next grade?
Ironically, and everyone knows the CSV file for upload is the same way we could pull the data out, but certainly we'd have access to that. Thank you.
And we, at least for some assessment systems, right, we kind of get involved and then they disappear, they stop.
Sure.
Qualtrics has some sort of track record that at least they've been around for a little while.
Yes. Okay. Great. Yeah, and thank you for asking the question. As I mentioned before, some of the other systems didn't have the maturity, had not been around from a developmental standpoint, weren't there yet, but also not as long-standing. As I mentioned before, some of the stats, 6,000 K-12 institutions, 6,800, and then 2,200 higher ed. So a pretty good number.
Any school systems in the state that aren't failing using it?
Yes. No, that's a good question. I wouldn't have all that data offhand. I think they probably shared a few, but I think one of them. I'm trying to think. They weren't as familiar with the Wisconsin districts locally, so they didn't list all of those for us. But yeah, there are some other very large institutions that are using it. I think some of them are using it for different purposes. We see the dashboard as our primary goal. Others have used it for that survey, engagement, and other processes. Of course, we're doing pretty well in that area as well, but there's an opportunity for efficiencies if we need to.
And my main concern is that I don't care, it's data. So as long as you can pull it out, something greater, better, this goes under, that's fine. As long as you can pull it out, you can always re-enter it into the next great thing. So
yeah.
Okay.
On the amount, so how are we going to fund that? Where I'm going at, so then we already know that we'll probably be estimated $200,000 more in operating costs when the referendum is done, so there's that. And then there's that in this, so we're finding places to capture that, or is this kind of a fund balance?
It's not a fund balance. We would find a spot within the technology budget to assume that cost, just general operations.
Okay.
So, correct, no fund balance.
Any other questions? Bring it back.
Back in July. Thank you.
Thank you.
G, school resource officer contract. Anything new in this?
No, it's just our commitment to them by August 1st that we would commit to the same level of service. They're expecting to have the negotiations possibly completed by our July meeting, and so that page 3 of the costing could be updated by then, but sometimes it's as late as December. So just so you know.
It's still the 2/3, 1/3, whatever, or 1/2, 40%. Yeah. Any questions? Comments? Policy update?
Okay, we had another, and I apologize because my board docs isn't working at this point, but we had another USDA, thank you, a USDA policy memorandum that came out. It came out after our last board meeting, but the requirement is that the adjustments that are noted in the two policies that are listed within board docs have to be approved and implemented by June 30th. And so we did not have a board meeting previous to this to bring this to you. And in talking with Neola, they did say that the board, if comfortable, would be able to approve the changes specifically outlined in bylaw 0131.1 that allows you to approve a policy immediately. And then at the next board meeting, you approve it again, and those two readings would constitute full approval. Again, these are specific regulations that came out from USDA about how food service policies must be written, as well as how much students are charged and how the handling of money is done if a student's account is negative, what food they're provided, and how their accounts are handled. So this policy just outlines that procedure. And it is the recommendation of the USDA. It's not our own personal preference.
No issue.
Questions? Okay. Sounds good. So you want us to approve this now?
If possible.
I'll move for approval.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Now that was just a vote to move forward. So now the vote is, we're going to get a motion to actually approve the...
I'll move to actually approve the policy as provided.
I'll second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You have your policy.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to item 9, information follow-up. Anything particular anyone needs? Any information following up? There's personnel information. Hearing none. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 10:14. Thank you, everyone. Look at my perfect timing of my battery.
There you go. And where after that meeting, then they can send it on the phone.
Yeah, that's not a big deal. It's just
You know, so it's a school. So,
I don't